All right, the big ideas in Unit 3 include that if you have parallel lines, then certain angles will either be congruent or supplementary. Like if you have parallel lines, corresponding angles are congruent. If you have parallel lines, alternate exterior angles are congruent. If you have parallel lines, alternate interior angles are congruent. And then also, if you have parallel lines, consecutive interior angles are supplementary. Consecutive exterior angles end up being supplementary as well. So that's one of the big ideas. The other big idea is that if you have two lines cut by transversal and corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines must be parallel. Or if you have alternate exterior angles congruent, then the lines must be parallel. If you have alternate exterior angles congruent, then the lines must be parallel. Or if you have consecutive interior angles supplementary, then the lines must be parallel. If you have consecutive interior or consecutive exterior angles supplementary, then the lines must be parallel. So those are the big ideas we're working with here. All right, so we start with the given angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. And we're also told that line CD is parallel, line C is parallel to line D. All right, because we have parallel lines there, because C and D are parallel, we can say that angle 2 and angle 3 are congruent because they are corresponding angles. So angle 2 is congruent to angle 3 because corresponding angles are congruent. So if you have parallel lines, corresponding angles are congruent. Now we can see that angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. You can either use, I said that wrong, angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. You can use substitution here because notice that angle 3 and angle 3 are in both of these statements. So put them together using substitution. Now that we have angle 1 and angle 2 congruent, we can say that line A is parallel to line B because those corresponding angles are congruent. So notice our second statement, angle 2 is congruent to angle 3. That comes from the fact that we have parallel lines and therefore the corresponding angles are congruent. Whereas this last one, we're saying the lines are parallel because the corresponding angles are congruent. So it's the converse of each other. A little different given information here. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, and then line A is parallel to line B. All right, because the lines A and B are parallel, we can say that those angles are congruent. Angle 2 is congruent to angle 3 because of corresponding angles. Because you have the parallel lines, the corresponding angles are congruent. Now we can use substitution and say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And now that we have 1 and 2 congruent, we can say that line C is parallel to line D because we have alternate interior angles congruent. Sorry about that interruption. So again, we can say line C is parallel to line D because we have 1 and 2 congruent, and those are alternate interior angles. A little bit different given information here. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, and line A is parallel to line B. Because we have parallel lines, A and B are parallel, we can say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. So angle 1 congruent to angle 2 because parallel lines are, because of the parallel lines, corresponding angles are congruent. Now if we put these statements together, we can now say that angle 2 is congruent to angle 3, and that's the, you could either say transitive or substitution. Now when you look at 2 and 3, they are corresponding angles, so we can say line C is parallel to line D because corresponding angles are congruent. All right, we'll do one last proof. If given information, angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, and we have line C is parallel to line D. Because C and D are parallel, we can say angle 2 is congruent to angle 3 because those are corresponding angles. So these corresponding angles are congruent because of the parallel lines. Now using substitution, we can say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Now that we have angle 1 and angle 2 congruent, we can say line A is parallel to line B because alternate exterior angles are congruent. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more practice on proofs for Unit 3. If you like this video, feel free to like it and subscribe to my channel. Peace.